was guilty on all charges. I was convicted for felony murder and for intentional murder and robbery and kidnapping.
A false confession is a confession elicited in response of a demand for a confession.
Sir, what is your name?
David McCallum.
Oh, okay, Mr. McCallum. You have the right to remain silent. That is, you do not have to speak to me or answer any of my questions. Do you understand that?
Yes, sir.
Anything you say to me can be used as evidence against you in a court of law. Do you understand that?
Yes, sir.
Now that I've advised you of your rights, do you want to speak to me about what happened?
Yes. We had brought the man in through the exit of the car and took him through the back. Okay.
David falsely committed to the murder due to the police abusing and harassing him to be the one to say he did it. The officer slapped him in the face, picked up the chair, and threatened to hit him with it.
At the time, I was willing to do and say anything they wanted.
Okay, where were you earlier in the day?
Appearing on videotape is absolutely and unequivocally the worst mistake of my life. I don't think anything can actually compare to that. Anything.
Okay, so we just got off the train in Queens, and there was this parked car, and there was this man sitting there. But he stuck the gun to the car window and told the man to get out. So the man got out, and we had got in, and he told the man to get back in, so he got back in. And then the guy asked us where we was going. He said we was going for a little ride.
I felt like it was important for me to try to make my confession more believable to the officers there. So what I did was I put details in the confession.
And the guy just asked, what are you doing? He just told the guy, you know what time it is.
District Attorney Kenneth Thompson said there is no other piece of evidence other than this confession that points to both David and Willie as suspects to the crime. Now we've realized that this confession, it was false.
These two teenagers had no chance with professional interrogators. And that's the only so-called evidence that the state presented was this false confession.
David's court-appointed lawyer pretty much dropped the ball in every way possible. He never visited the crime scene. David was only interviewed once before his trial, and he also failed to bring a suspect named Chrissy into the case. His lawyer was later disbarred.
Tell me about your lawyer.
For the count, I'm going to be very kind here. So I'm going to say that he was grossly incompetent, to say the least.
What do you really think?
He was a piece of shit.
Since David didn't have a lot of money, he couldn't afford a good lawyer. And because of this, he suffered in trial. As we can see, his lawyer further withheld evidence.
There was reasonable doubt all over the place. So when you open up the file, you see the route for his exoneration right there.
Unfortunately, David's lawyer did not use the evidence that a suspect named Chrissy gave, who encountered two men thin-built. One hair had braids in it.
Neither McCallum nor Stuckey wore braids. Now, that occurred within an hour before Nathan Blender's abduction.
Stuckey's confession has this account of meeting a woman or a girl on the street. Now, why is that important? Because her description of the offenders doesn't fit Stuckey and McCallum.
Had he had better representation at trial, he'd probably be walking the streets right now.
The jury had no idea that someone had given a description of two black males that did not match McCallum or Stuckey's description at or around the time of the crime.
I mean, it's ludicrous. This was one of the early days of videotaped confessions. So it was very unusual for a jury to be able to actually see the defendant allegedly confessing to the crime. Here you have the guy right in front of you on film. You can see that there's no gun to his head. So in the end, nobody believed that those confessions were coerced. New York City in the mid-1980s, crime was at an all-time high because of gangs, gun violence, and crack. There were multiple murders every day. The police that time had their hands full. Courts were fed up. People had it. Jurors had it. We wanted our city back. And all those pressures were coming to bear into that courtroom when David and Willie were ushered into it for their trial. It wasn't just about their case. It was about all of the crime that was going on in the city at that time.
Because of the public pressure that the police were facing, they needed to find a suspect for the killing of Nathan. Tunnel vision is something that can be adopted by the police, the Crown, judges. It is when one is single-minded and having an overly narrow focus on a particular suspect or theory, leading to unreasonably molding new information to fit this theory and ignoring evidence that discredits it. Tunnel vision is present within David McCallum's case.
McCallum confessed to stealing a car, so did Stuckey, but each accused the other of the shooting. Thompson said a review found not a shred of evidence linking either of them to the crimes, and the confessions were forced.
He was lied to, he was manipulated, he was physically assaulted, and all of those things led to him saying, I'll just say whatever I got to do to get out. I want to see my family.
When this case was tried, it was before the days of DNA evidence. This is important because DNA evidence has showed us that people do falsely commit to crimes, especially young teenagers.
Tests performed by McCallum's legal team found someone else's DNA on cigarettes in the stolen vehicle.
These cigarette butts had never been tested for DNA because the technology didn't exist at the time.
Reuben Carter was twice wrongfully convicted for a triple murder and was imprisoned for nearly 2 decades. He was released in 1985 after a federal judge overturned his conviction, and Carter went on to become an activist for the wrongfully convicted. In 2004, Carter founded the group Innocent International and often lectured about seeking justice for the wrongfully convicted. In February 2014, while battling prostate cancer, Carter tried to help and exonerate David McCallum. On April 20th, 2014, Carter died. The cause of his death was complications from prostate cancer. Hurricane Carter said, "Me, being inside the prison and knowing there were a lot of individuals on the outside fighting on my behalf, it strengthened me up. It reminded me of the goal. The goal was to get me out of there, and I knew I had to do my part."
Reuben didn't want any kind of funeral or memorial service. For his last public act, he wrote a letter stating that his single regret in life was that David McCallum was still in prison. And for his dying wish, he called upon the district attorney to grant David a full hearing.
Before Reuben Carter passed away, he published an article in the Daily News entitled "Hurricane Carter's Dying Wish." Carter wrote about McCallum's case and his own life. He said, "If I find a heaven after this life, I'll be quite surprised. In my own years on this planet, though, I've lived in hell for the first 49 years, and I've been in heaven for the past 28 years. To live in a world where truth matters and justice, however late, really happens. That world would be heaven enough for all of us."
The letter was republished around the world.
McCallum's case was championed by the late Hurricane Carter, a boxer and symbol of racial injustice who had himself been wrongfully convicted in the 1960s. But the stunning reversal came at the recommendation of the Brooklyn District Attorney. In less than a year since taking office, Ken Thompson has helped overturn 10 convictions of his predecessors.
My main duty as a DA is not just to convict, but to do justice. And when I walked through the doors of this office in January, I inherited a legacy of disgrace with respect to wrongful conviction cases.
Because of the discovery of the confessions from Willie and McCallum not matching up, proof of no DNA evidence pointing towards David or Willie committing the crime, the awareness of police coercion used when David falsely confessed, the public awareness created through the help of Hurricane Carter, who himself was convicted, and the recommendation of the Brooklyn District Attorney last year in 2014, Ken Thompson, helping to do justice and overturn convictions of his preceders. David McCallum was exonerated.
I will dismiss the indictment.
Sitting beside McCallum in court was Rosia Neely. Her son, Willie Stuckey, had been convicted with McCallum. He died in prison, where McCallum has spent the last 3 decades.
Well, this is a bittersweet moment because there's someone else who's supposed to be walking out with me, but unfortunately he's not.
Justice officials in the U.S. believe that 1 in 5% of felony convictions are wrongful. In Canada, 1% is 6,000 cases.
Come out of prison, you're barren right back here in society, and you know nothing about this society.
That is a lot of cases, and something needs to be done about this. David is just one individual who served time in jail for a crime he did not commit. He was falsely accused based on false confession, problematic police behavior, a poor lawyer for support who would further withhold evidence, a jury who was uninformed, and police stress that was evident due to public pressures. This further led to police experiencing tunnel vision, and the fact that the DNA evidence was not able to be tested during the time also hindered David McCallum's case.
McCallum now plans to help others who've been wrongfully convicted.
I think the system can be fixed, but I just think people need to pay more attention to those individuals who cry for help.
100 convictions are currently being reevaluated in Brooklyn alone.